Well, I'm grateful to be able to see your faces today as we continue on our Lenten series, taking some time to self-reflect and to also look at a little closer the movie Inside Out that's made by Disney and Pixar. Last week we talked about the emotion of fear and how sometimes fear can cripple us when it's left unchecked and prevent us from stepping out into things we're called to, but sometimes it can also be a healthy, safe boundary for us. The importance is engaging in conversations to distinguish the difference, to be able to talk about what we are feeling or thinking so that we make sure that fear doesn't prevent us from doing what God calls us to do. But today, we have a different emotion that will be coming our way. If you have seen the movie, you may notice that Heather, wait to advance for just a second. Each person's brain has a control center. This is an example of Riley's control center. However, anger is the one manning the helm at this moment. But if you notice, when you see other characters and get to see inside their minds, not all of them have the same order of who's in charge of their brain. I'll give you an example. You can move forward now. So the top two skinny roles are Riley's mom and her dad, and their control centers. You'll notice with mom, the main head emotion is sadness, and with dad, the main emotion is anger. But Riley's the one that seems to be in charge the most is joy. My dream is that they make a sequel that helps us understand a little bit more about why Riley's mom and dad have those as their head emotions. Maybe a backstory about the parents and who they were and stuff. I think that would be really fascinating. But for Riley, her head emotion is joy. Joy was also her first emotion she had. It shows a video of her brand new little baby, and the first feeling that she experiences is joy. And then sadness shows up about half a second later. So laughter and tears were Riley's first emotions that she had. What's fascinating is we hear most of the story in this movie from Joy's perspective. And you can hear that she doesn't really trust the other emotions. That she obviously knows what's best for Riley. That she has, this great joyful thing going on, and all the other emotions just are not nearly as fun as she is. And so she definitely struggles with trust with the other emotions to benefit Riley's well-being. To the point where she likes to brag about the amount of memories that Riley has that are rooted in joy, especially core memories. And so I want to take a moment and check out a video talking a little bit about the core memories that build up in Riley.
Anyway, these are Riley's memories, and they're mostly happy, you'll notice, not to brag. But the really important ones are over here. I don't want to get too technical, but these are called core memories. Each one came from a super important time in Riley's life. Like when she first scored a goal. It was so amazing. Powers a different aspect of Riley's personality. Like Hockey Island. Goofball Island is my personal favorite. Yeah, goofball is the best.
So the general premise of the way a personality develops in the movie Inside Out is that your memories significantly impact who you build up to be. The core memories, or these big memories, develop individual islands that continue to make different parts of your personality. So for Riley, she has, at this point in the movie, 5 different islands, main chunks of her personality. Joy is pretty proud that at this point in the movie, all of Riley's core memories are joy. And Joy would do everything in her power to make sure that all of the core memories stay joyful. But the family moves. They move from Minnesota to Seattle, a bit of a difference in culture. And or San Francisco, not Seattle, sorry, San Francisco. It's another S name, another weird town, just kidding. San Francisco is perfectly fine. Anybody from San Francisco, you're great. There's no judgment there, but weird. Significantly different than Minnesota. And she has a tough time adjusting. Not to go into the entire movie in one moment, but Joy doesn't handle the fact that Riley is feeling other emotions than joy in this change. And so the story unfolds from that point. Riley eventually has a new core memory and is rooted in sadness. And Riley feels like the other emotion, or Joy feels like the other emotions have basically ruined something for Riley. That change in Riley's life impacted her personality, her identity, and is making a big shift in who she's outwardly expressing herself as. Today, in our scripture that we're going to read, we are going to see another person's identity being changed and challenged. God is going to talk to a person and call them to a new place and a new identity, and we're going to navigate what that looks like for that individual and what that means for us together today. So I encourage you to turn with me to Genesis chapter 12. We're going to look at verses 1 through 4 together and hear a story that may be quite familiar to all of us, but maybe from a new angle today. So once again, Genesis is at the front of your Bible. And so once you get past the intro pages, you'll have Genesis, and we're at chapter 12. In this last week, we were at the very beginning of chapters 2 and 3. So we've passed a little bit of time and hopped down to chapter 12. We're going to read these few short verses together today. The Lord said to Abram, "Leave your land, your family, and your father's household for the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation and will bless you. I will make your name respected, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. Those who curse you, I will curse. All of the families of the earth will be blessed because of you." Abram left just as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. So forgive me if I slip up and call Abraham at some point. His name becomes Abraham, but as I was practicing, I kept going, wait, his name's not that yet. I've got to back up a little bit. But this point in our story is a significant change in the book of Genesis. If you were here last week, we talked a little bit about the structure of Genesis being unique because its genre is kind of split up. It's part of the books of Moses, or seen as the Torah or the law, but not necessarily considered history, but more of like a people's story, a way for us to make a point of what our identity is rooted in. And so in Genesis 1 through 11, it was important to pinpoint that the beginning of Genesis starts out as poetry in the Hebrew, and so was considered not quite like fables, but telling a story from a pretty perspective, from a beautiful poetic perspective. And we are at that transition point out of poetry into a more traditional format of writing. But before this, it leads up to preparing us to hear about Abram. We learned about creation last week. After creation, there's some tension that happens in the rebellion. Adam and Eve have kids, population grows, then there's Noah and a flood, and then the flood ends, and Noah's kids, 3 sons, all have families that grow and develop. And one of Noah's sons, Shem, is the lineage that the scriptures say is where Abram is from. Abram's dad was named Terah, T-E-R-A-H. And so they paint this picture of our beginning, and in the transition, they transition connecting Abram and this historical story that's going to unfold to the beginnings of the Jewish people, the beginnings of their stories. Just before this, we hear about the descendants of Noah getting a little proud and building a tower. We talked about this in Sunday school today a little bit. By the way, we have a lot of fun in Sunday school. If I haven't said that before, we laugh a lot. It's a good time. You should definitely come hang out with us sometime. You'll never know what's going to be said until you show up. People who have been there will understand why this is funny. But, so there's this transition that we see here from Genesis 11 to Genesis 12, and we're moving in the direction of some more tangible outlines of a story unfolding. Abram is introduced, and Abram is introduced, and God says, "Hey, you, I have a plan for you. Yeah, I know that you're living with your dad and your brothers and your nephew. Your brother, your older brother has passed away, and so you've adopted your nephew as like a quasi-son who will inherit your stuff, because you don't have any kids, but like all of that stuff, I'm going to change it. All of it. I'm going to move you. You're going to leave your family. You're going to change, basically your profession and how you live your life. But trust me, I've got it. It seems pretty black and white and simple, but what God is asking for is a rather huge thing. Can any of you picture this moment where you have a conversation with God, and God's like, "Hey, I need you to just quit your job, sell your house, and move to Antarctica. I got it, trust me." Also, there won't be a phone to be able to call your family, or a postal service, or the internet. Just move there, it's fine. I got you. It's kind of a big ask that God's doing in this moment. When I think about how we introduce ourselves as people, it's like, "Hi, I'm Mariah, I'm a pastor. I live in Kokomo. I grew up in South Dakota, but, Indiana's home now. And I have a husband, and we have this nice life with a million animals. It's great." But when you think about how you define yourself or how you introduce yourself, frequently where you live, what you do, and who's your family are some of the first things that you talk about, right? Scratch all of that, and we're going to start over. Okay? Just, all of those introduction things, that's what God's nixing out and saying, "Okay, we're going to start over, something new. It'll be fine. Don't worry. I got you." There's this exercise of trust that God is asking from Abram. And this exercise of trust, sounds pretty great. God says, "Yeah, I want to change your identity, but you will get a new land. You will become a great nation and a respected name, and you will be a blessing to this earth." No matter what you've identified yourself as before, this is what I'm giving you as a new identity. I will give you a land back. I will give you a people back, and everything that you thought was taken away, something new will be put in its place. Now, the hard part of only telling you one part of Abram's story is that the end of this passage looks all warm and fuzzy. Because verse 4 says, Abram and Lot left. It sounds like they were doing what God asked them to do, right? Abram and Lot, which, in this moment also means Abram and his wife Sarai, Lot and his wife and daughters. Like, there's other people that were involved in this. It's not just two bros going on a hike. But a whole group of people are going to be moving, and that's what verse 4 says. Verse 4 says it's going to happen. But if you keep reading a little more in Abram's story, yes, this first step was great. He made some great leaps and bounds towards trust at the beginning. And then a famine happened in the lands that they ended up, so they decided to go to Egypt for a while. But I don't know if you know anything about Abram's wife, Sarai, but she's really, really good looking. And so Abram was worried about being safe in Egypt, so he's like, hey, wife, I know you're hot, so can you just lie to Pharaoh and say that you're my sister so they don't kill me and then marry you? Okay? And she's like, sure, honey, whatever you say. And they have these moments where there's this question of like, God has asked me to do this big thing, but is he going to take care of me in the process? I've got a plan. I've got an idea for how to deal with the worries I've got. It'll be fine. God's offering this joyful thing, and they are full of fear because it's change. And they make a plan for themselves and say, I've got it planned out. God also promised them offspring. We talked about this in Sunday school today too. And Abram and Sarai say, oh yeah, I mean, Abram can have kids, but Sarah's like way old. Like, there's no way she can have kids anymore. So I know, let's give him a spring chicken, Hagar, and he can have a kid through her. That's obviously what God meant, right? That's us fulfilling God's promise in this way, right? And God's like, no, I said that Sarai would be the mom. Like, I have a plan. Can you just be patient and I will take care of things? And eventually they do get their son Isaac. Ishmael was the first son that they had. And then that Hagar had. And then Sarah gives birth to Isaac. And Abram's name becomes Abraham. Sarai's name becomes Sarah, which are both much easier to pronounce. But throughout the process, God is asking them to trust him, that he's got a plan and it's going to be good. And they join the rest of humanity in saying, yeah, God, I know you've got a plan, but I'm not really sure that I think it's going to be a good one. I think I know a good solution to this plan, to this problem. And Abram and Sarah look, though they are like the pillars and the foundations of the Old Testament, and we even sing songs today at VBS about Abraham. And move funny parts. Abraham, so many sons. You know that song stuck in your head the rest of the day. You're welcome. But they are known as like this renowned couple, but their story wasn't perfect. They had a tough time trusting God, and I feel like they're like the rest of humanity. God has been consistent so far in the first 12 chapters of the Bible. From the beginning of Genesis now to chapter 12, God's like, hey, I've got a plan, humanity, creation. I've got some good stuff planned. Like, you're going to be my ambassadors. I've made you in my image. You're going to care for the earth, and it's going to be great. You are both created, and you are reflecting the Creator. Two things at once. Isn't it going to be awesome? And they're like, hey, God, yeah, I feel like you're holding out on us. I'm going to go a different route. Because I don't think that you're giving us all of the good stuff. There's got to be more good stuff around. This just doesn't seem quite like it's living up. And over again, we see humanity going, God, are you sure this is the plan? I don't really like this plan. And God going, I promised you good stuff. Abraham, I promised you to be a blessing, and you would ripple effect blessing throughout the creation. I will bless those who bless you. You will bless other nations. People will know you and know that you are blessed. It's going to be a ripple effect of goodness. He's like, yeah. Sarah, can you lie for me? Because I feel like this Pharaoh guy isn't going to be nice to me. I like to tease Abram and Sarai, but I also fully understand their perspective. Sometimes God places something before us and we go, are you sure, God? And we, like Abram, kind of reflect joy in those moments and go, okay, I know, this seems like a great plan, but I've got a really good one too. I've got a great idea of what should happen. And we kind of forget that God is consistent. God's consistent in trustworthiness and goodness and his plan for the goodness of all creation. It's humans that have a short attention span about things. For Joy, she struggled with trusting the other emotions to benefit Riley. Like I said earlier, we learned about fear. There's also anger, disgust. What is the other one? Anger, disgust, joy, fear, sadness. Oh, we've talked about her a few times already. We see these 5 emotions, and Joy thinks that she's the only one that can benefit Riley. But I think those other emotions exist when kept in check to benefit us. And Joy has an eye-opening experience, a humbling experience, later on in the video, learning that maybe the other emotions have something that they can offer. So we have another clip that I want to show you. This video might be a little quiet, Heather, so if it sounds hard to hear, we crank it up a little bit more.
The big playoff game. Riley missed the winning shot. She felt awful. She wanted to quit.
Sadness. Mom and Dad, they came to help because of sadness.
Joy had to have an attitude adjustment to learn that maybe she wasn't the only significant emotion in Riley's brain. For Abram, and maybe the rest of us, we may need a trust adjustment. To look back at the story of where we came from, the people who taught us about who Jesus is, and then also back to the beginning, like we are in Genesis, and see that God's been consistent and trustworthy this entire time, even when we may not trust in that. God's plans for creation have been consistent since the beginning. And even in our scripture reading that we read today, we heard one of the most famous passages in all of Scripture read. John 3:16 was in there about God's intentions for creation that echo back to what he planned at the very beginning. For God so loved the world, right? And he had a plan, something good. And that plan was the same as the one at creation, and then what we hear in Abraham's story, And it's continuing on today, that God's saying, hey, I intend good things for my people. That blessing, that blessedness we learned about during the season of Epiphany is here again. And that our state of blessedness is to be a ripple effect in this world, sharing it with our community. The shift is about our trust in God's plan. And I want us to hang on this a little bit, and so I'm sorry for you, but I won't have perfect resolution in this problem. Like, some of us are still in the process of learning how to trust God, but this is the season of Lent. This is a season when we are to be reflecting on our relationship with God. A season for us to take some time to think about where we are in our life, where we want to be, and how our relationship with God can be adjusted to get from point A to point B. If you haven't committed to that route and that plan of joining God on this journey that He has, next Sunday, we'll be having our conversation about baptism in the evening. That'll be at 6 p.m. And that'll be a chance, if you have questions and are still trying to navigate this, that's a good time to come and ask questions and say, what does it mean to follow Jesus? What does it mean to navigate joining God in this plan of blessing creation? It's a great time to talk. Or maybe you've decided that you want to join the plan with God, and you want to make that declaration known to others. Baptism is a great way to communicate that. So that's also part of the conversation we'll have. And then a baptism service will happen on Easter Sunday, which, in case you didn't know, is a really big historical thing. It used to be that's the only time of year baptisms happened, was Easter Sunday, because it's a death and resurrection, kind of like somebody else's death and resurrection. Parallels, they're so fun. But we will have a baptism service on Easter, on April 12th. If you've already made this commitment, if you've already been baptized, if you've already, or made a public declaration that, like, I'm in this to join the journey, Lent is a good season to reflect on how that's going. How have you and God been going with your faith journey? How has it been trusting God with what things God sets before you? Are you ready to step into the newness of whatever's coming next? Do you see God's trustworthiness as you look back at your story and how God's got your back throughout it all? Lent is a great time for self-reflection and a time of knowing yourself more fully. When we don't take those moments of self-reflection, we can be stuck like Joy in this moment thinking, I am just the only gift that God has in this world. Like, it's a great thing you all have me, because where would you be without me? It's kind of what Joy's thoughts are, right? And sometimes that's our thoughts. Like, man, this church would just slowly slip away if I wasn't here. It's a good thing I'm carrying the weight of all of your stuff. I don't actually feel that way, for the record. But Lent is a good time of self-reflection for us to be able to make sure that we're not growing proud, that we're not growing arrogant about our place in God's story, but learning that it's God's story that we're part of, and that we can participate in the ripple effect of blessing. We can participate in enriching the lives of others if we choose to step in and follow God on that commitment. Let's join together in prayer. God, I've said it once and I'll say it a million times. I have a tough time letting go. I have a tough time trusting you to be in control. In this moment, God, we look at you sometimes with our fists clenched with the things that we need to trust your guidance on, and instead we want to control them or plan them out or structure things our way. But Lord, we ultimately want to want what you want. We want to be part of that blessing ripple effect. And so we ask you to soften our hearts, loosen our clenched fists, and be prepared to enter into whatever you bring before us so that we can be a blessing in this world. We can join in on the plan you've had since the beginning of all creation. We want to be part of your story. Lord, we love you and we thank you. In your name we pray. Amen. I ask you to close the service with us by standing. And once again, if you're worried about germs, it's okay. Like, we can elbow touch. I know people are giggling about this. You know, like, it's okay to giggle. But also, it's okay to elbow bump if you want to. But this is our way to show our connection to each other. I respect that. Trusting in the changing identity that comes with following God, seeing God's track record of trustworthiness, and being part of the blessing ripple effect in this community. Amen.